Okay, I've started the recording and I'm going to share a little bit today from the document for this class, which is the ebook of the tutorial for Repertory. So if you haven't downloaded that yet, it is at the very front of that RP10 class. The very first session has all the documents that you can download. So up till now, we've been talking about what's in the various sections. What do they have in them? What is in a rubric? How did those things get in there? What isn't in a rubric, but we probably should pay attention to when we see other things in a rubric? We talked about the mineral kingdom and the way that with the mineral kingdom, you can assume, oh, if calcarea is there and arsenicum is there, then we can imagine that calcarea arsenicum is there. If nat mur is there and sulfur is there, then we can imagine that maybe nat sulf has a place there. And also, when we see one remedy that is actually a template from a group of better known remedies, like when we see lachesis, sometimes that can be the placeholder for general snakiness. Or if we see tarantula, that can be the placeholder for general spideriness. Or when we see a couple of the different lac remedies, that can be a placeholder for the milks. So we've been talking about how Kent built the repertory, what's in the different sections, what's in the rubrics, how did they get there? And then we went through several sessions now of how the heck do we manage this arrangement thing? Because it seems like it's alphabetical until it's not, and then all of a sudden it's alphabetical again. And how do we make sure that we know where we are? Do you guys have any questions from the last few sessions where we went through in the head section and in the extremities section? It's great. Under any pain section is a great way to look at what all of the arrangement is. Any questions about any of that? Did you guys have a chance to look through the head section and how under head pain, there's all these different sensations, and then there's all the different locations and all the details associated with each of those? No questions on that? Okay, then we're just going to dive right in. So up till now, everything that we've talked about has pretty much been one rubric at a time, one section at a time. We've talked about the overlap between sections. You know, what's the overlap between skin in the skin section and maybe eruptions on the face that shows up in the face section. But we've still kind of been talking about one rubric, one entry at a time. Today, we're going to review the basic concepts of repertorization and how we create collections of rubrics. So, a case, anything that a person needs is based on more than one symptom. So usually a triad of symptoms is a minimum. Have you guys heard the idea of the three-legged stool? That a remedy selection should be like a three-legged stool. You can't pick a remedy for somebody on just one symptom with a great deal of reliability. But when you get three clear, strong, striking characteristics of what that state is for that person, what's limiting them, that's when you're pretty much able to choose a good remedy. So There are usually several symptoms ready at the same time. And the fact that they are showing up at the same time as each other, that's what creates the pattern that we are so interested in. So imagine that somebody has a sinus infection and they have pain on their left cheek, and at the same time, they have a skin eruption that comes out, an itchy skin eruption behind their right knee. That is going to bring you to a different set of remedies than one where somebody has a sinus infection with pain in the left cheek, and they also have a sore throat that feels like cut glass, or they also have a sensation of cold water dripping down their cheek. Now, all of those things are important symptoms that become a part of whatever pattern it is that we're looking at. So when we approach the repertory, we think about these groupings or constellations of symptoms. Think about the way that you recognize stars in the sky at night. Do any of you recognize Orion, Orion's belt, the Big Dipper? Those things we see because of the relationships of those stars to each other. So let's just imagine now that you're sitting there talking with someone who says, I have this intense fear of thunderstorms, and it's ruining my life. When a thunderstorm comes, I can kind of feel it coming. I can feel that there's something going on with the weather, even if I don't know, even if I don't hear it on the news, I can feel that there's something happening. And as soon as I hear one clap of thunder, I am in panic and I go hide in my closet with the door closed because I can't stand it. It scares me so much that I cannot stand it. Now, first of all, we would have to recognize that that's remarkable, right? That's the first thing when somebody's talking to you. We have to recognize that it's remarkable. Now, what if Dot and I were talking and she was telling me that she had this intense fear of thunderstorms, and just by chance, I also happen to be horribly afraid of thunderstorms. I wouldn't hear it as a symptom, would I? I would just say to her, oh, right, aren't they the worst? Oh, thunderstorms, yeah, wow, how does anybody get through that? Now, if I have the same thing, I'm not even going to recognize it as a symptom. And this is one of the reasons why we have to listen very clearly, not with our personal self to what the person is telling us. We have to listen very clearly with our professional self that says, does average Joe on the street, does average Jane on the street have a tremendous fear of thunderstorms that would cause him or her to go sit in the bottom of the bedroom closet with the door closed? Does it seem likely that the average person reacts to thunderstorms in that way? Seems a little unlikely. And so that's what tells us, oh, this is a strong and striking clear symptom. This is not common. Are any of you guys Sherlock Holmes fans? Have you read any of the original Arthur Conan Doyle? One of the things that Sherlock Holmes says that is so useful, he says that we should remember as homeopaths. Sherlock Holmes has very good advice for us as homeopaths. He says that which is common is not helpful. And he's always looking for these interesting details that other people don't notice. So if somebody said, sometimes I feel uncomfortable around thunderstorms if there's really loud thunder, would that be remarkable? No, because that might be common. A lot of people, if there's big, loud claps of thunder, might be a little bit uncomfortable. But for it to be enough that the person feels terrified and they go and sit in their closet with the door closed, that's intense. All right. So the first symptom, intense fear of thunderstorms. The next thing is that I never drink coffee or tea, because if I drink any kind of hot drink, it upsets my stomach. I'm a cold ice water gal. Actually, that's not true for me at all. You guys have seen me here with my teacup the vast majority of the time. But for this particular example, let's say this is something else that's unusual about me. There aren't that many people that feel nauseous after drinking warm drinks. So in fact, this person might say it's so bad that after I have 3 or 4 sips of something warm, all of a sudden I can almost feel a gag if I try to drink anymore. It's really, the nausea comes up, suddenly it's bad. All right, and then the last thing that this person says is, I bump into stuff, I guess, and I'll get like a great big purple bruise. And the next day I'm getting out of bed and I'm looking at it thinking, what happened to you? What did I bump into? And it can be like, I just bumped the door jamb and it's not that hard. And it seems like I get these bruises that are great big and out of proportion to what's actually going on. Okay? So let's take a minute now and find a rubric for each of these 3 things. Let's see what we can find. The first one we're going to find is fear of thunderstorms. Where are we looking for that? All right, so dots on it. Mind, fear, thunderstorms. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Looks like there's 11 remedies in there. So that's our first one. The next one is nausea after drinking something warm. What section are we going to be looking for that? In the stomach section? So what about something like stomach, aversion, warm cooked food? Is that close enough? No. Right. So dots right on it. Stomach, nausea from warm drinks. Sometimes as we're going through, we'll see other things and we'll be like, oh, is this close enough? Is that actually what they said? So we want to get as close as we possibly can to what they said. So stomach, nausea, warm drinks. Okay, so we've got 4 remedies in there. Oh, and then we've got stomach, nausea, warm drinks, ameliorates, warm drinks, warm room in. Do you see that next sub-rubric? This is interesting. Stomach, nausea, warm drinks, and then ameliorates, and then room in. Does this mean that they are drinking a warm drink in a warm room? What does that mean? Sometimes this can be confusing. All of these are sub-rubrics of warm. So there's the nausea from warm drinks, from a warm room, from entering a warm room, and from a warm stove. So sometimes you have to be careful about the way that you read these, so you can think, is this a warm drink in a warm room? A warm stove in a warm room? A warm drink with a warm stove? You just got to make sure that you're taking the warm part and carrying it on to the rest. All right, now where are we going to look for easy bruising? Since this is something that can take place anywhere on the body, we're probably not going to look in face or extremities. Where are we going to find something that covers the whole person? Skin, yep. Because bruising we always see on skin. Also generalities, absolutely. So if you look under generalities bruising, Kent tells you to go to injuries. So that's a possibility. We can go to generalities, injuries. And also, what if we go into the skin section? What do we see there? Here's where we start to run into a little bit of vocabulary. If you go into skin and you're looking in the alphabetical order for bruising, we see skin bruised pain. That's not what they're talking about. Very good, Dot. So the term ecchymosis is a term that's based on Greek words that involve blood leaking out into the skin. Blood that is leaking out of capillaries and makes the big purple color. So either of those things, generalities, injuries, which is less specific, it would cover bruising, but it could also cover a broken bone or having a knitting needle get poked through your elbow or a whole bunch of other things that aren't what the person said. So skin ecchymosis is going to be more specific, more individualizing. So let's talk about the process of repertorization. Do you guys remember Venn diagrams from when you were in school? I always loved these, where they're used for logic sets. What's a bigger set? What's a smaller set? What's the overlap and intersection? So what we're trying to do here is find where do we have thunderstorms and nausea from warm drinks and easy bruising all together. Those remedies that are contained in all three of these, that's what we want. So here's our remedies. And we can see these are all the remedies that are related to our thunderstorms rubric. These are the remedies that are related to nausea. These ones in here, lachesis and pulsatilla, these two are in both the nausea rubric and the easy bruising. We don't have any other overlap between the thunderstorms and the easy bruising. And here we have one remedy that is covered by all three. Now, this visual example is the core of what we are doing with repertorization all the time. And most of the time, the person has more than 3 items that we're looking at, sometimes just 3. But if there's more, we can still use the idea of Venn diagrams. There's just more circles. It looks like a little daisy with all the little circles around it, but we're still looking at what is covered by all or by most of these features. Now, if we are trying to identify those things that match our 3-legged stool, this is our approach. And when I first started out using the repertory, we didn't have computer repertorization tools yet. David Workington was just building McRepertory. And so this was back in when I started studying homeopathy in the 1980s. So I started out with paper repertorization sheets. I'm going to show you an example of one here. Now you can download these from the RP10 initial section. And this was the first 5 years of my practice. I repertorized by hand like this all the time. So I wrote my remedies or my rubrics up here. And then each of these remedies that I might be considering were in this list. And if the remedy was in that list, then I would write it down. So sometimes if we look at the documentation here, it shows us grade. Remember, if you have plain type, that's a grade 1. If you have italic font, that's a grade 2. And if you have bold print, that's a grade 3. So when we come and look at this repertorization sheet, that's the 1, 2s, or 3s there. So the first rubric is not very big. And so there's not that many things in the first column. You can see gelsemium over here. You can see nat carb, nat mur, nitric acid, phosphorus, sepia. And this was something that gave you a chance to visually see what was covered. And you can look, argentum nitricum, that could be a great remedy for anxiety, huh? It's got all kinds of stomach nausea kinds of things, but it's not in either of those other rubrics. It's in the rubric for ecchymosis. Arnica is in the rubric for ecchymosis. If we look at all of these different ones, lachesis here showed up in 2 of them. So it had a grade, a cumulative grade of 4 across 2 rubrics. Phosphorus showed up in 3, pulsatilla in 2. Now, did you start out using these? It is a wonderful way of helping you really understand every once in a while to go back and go through one of these. I started out doing this my first 5 years of practice with every case. And I use the computer software now, and I think most homeopaths use computer software. But even in situations like this, how many of you have found yourself in the middle of the night looking at your kid who is sick, or your dog who is sick, or your friend who is sick, and you've got one finger in the mind section with fear of thunderstorms, and you've got another finger in the stomach section for the nausea with warm drinks, and you've got another finger in the skin section with the ecchymosis, and you're just going back and forth and looking. This is all an informal way of doing repertorization, of using the repertory to point out to us for that specific constellation, this looks like Orion and Orion's belt. Now, just like the constellations of stars in the sky sometimes have a star that's part of this constellation and part of that constellation, we can have remedies that are in more than one rubric or show up in different ways with a greater or lesser emphasis. And so as we study the repertory, we need to be flexible about, oh, it's part of this constellation. Oh, now it's part of that constellation. And see that the pattern matching that we're doing is different each time. Now, you can even use, if you're in a pinch, you can make a Venn diagram like this for yourself, where you can write it down and you can just check the different remedies in there and put them into a diagram. How many of you have software that you're using now? Dot, you do? Carol? Kristen? So if you don't have software yet, you can use these repertorization sheets in order to work through the cases that we're going to be working on in these sessions. and have a chance to take a look and see. It will help you really develop your skills. Okay. So now we have to ask ourselves, what does the result mean? Let's say that we filled out this repertorization sheet and we marked down every remedy that was in any of these 3 rubrics, and now we're looking at it. The first question we're going to come up with was, what does this mean? I see it. I see the data. What does it mean? What do I do with it now? So that's what we're going to talk about next session. When you come up with a chart like this, whether it's hand done or whether it's in repertory software, the outcome is the same. You still have to look at the result and say, how do I interpret this? How do I implement what this is telling me? And so that's what we're going to do next time in our next session. Questions, guys? No? Okay. Well, I will look forward to seeing you next time. We will again have the repertory, we'll have some cases, and we're going to specifically start using the results of a repertorization and say, what does this mean? How do I do something with this? All right, guys. Have a great week, and I will see you again on another session soon. Bye-bye. Thanks, Dot. Take care.